Hi everyone, it's Mike here from 20 Road and welcome to this quick start guide on installing your Birdsnest Explorer server. Now before you get underway, you're going to need four things. You're going to need two database passwords. One is for the Neo4j database account and the other one's for the SVC Birdsnest DB account. One is the built-in admin and the other one is the Birdsnest Explorer connection account. So if we just make up some passwords, the double quotes character is not currently supported in the Neo4j database account in the managed installer, but is supported there. So there's our two passwords. Save them somewhere secure in your password safe. And we need an admin group, an Active Directory, and a user group, an Active Directory. Now I've already created these, so we should be good to go. So unpack your zip file and we will run the managed installer.exe. We'll have tabs from left to right following the process of our install, and keep an eye on the output window here at the bottom where you'll see the stats and messages from the install process. So we come through and install the licenses, then we come to our install tab and we just go from top to bottom installing the items in the components list. Now you'll get a warning that the server needs a reboot after you install the .NET Core hosting component. We will just do that reboot at the end. Now you can install or change the root path of where Birdsnest Explorer will be installed to wherever you like. I'm just going to leave the defaults. Now at the finish of the Neo4j database install, it will prompt you for your database credentials that you want to set. So we'll paste those in there. Save. So that's actually triggered the post install step for that option. So that's our main install finished. Now we're going to pop over to the post install tab. We can see that our Neo4j database setup has already been completed because that was automatically triggered. Now we're going to run the configuration for the authentication in the Birdsnest Explorer console. So here we're going to set the display name that's going to show up in the console to identify this domain. We're just going to call that AD. We're going to set our domain or the domain controller or the fully qualified domain name of the domain controller that we want to connect to, and the root of the search to find our admin and user groups. My home lab supports SSL, so I'm going to select that to use LDAP S, and the timeout is the activity timeout on the console before the user will have their session authentication timed out. So we save that. Now this will automatically complete if you have run from start to finish. If you happen to have restarted the managed installer, it will prompt you for this password again. Now we configure our AD scanner for doing our data ingestion. Again, we give it the scanner an ID. The domain name is usually fine. Again, the domain or the domain controller we want to connect to, and the root of our scan. We again enable LDAP-S, and if we are not on a domain joined server, we may need to set connection credentials to authenticate to the domain to enable our scan. Because I'm on a domain server, this is not required. So that's now done. Now there's a couple of optionals at the bottom. If you don't need the default website that comes created by default in IIS, you can delete that here. Birdsnest Explorer creates its own IIS site, so the default website is not needed. So we can click run to remove that for us quick and easy. We'll also want to run this to enable long path support, so we don't have issues with the 260 character limit with file system paths, which can sometimes give us some issues. Again, system reboot is required for that option as well. And we will also run this, which generates some memory configuration recommendations for our Neo4j database server for performance optimization. You will get memory recommendations and also the file where that's configured, plus some extra notes there from the tool. So we will reboot our server now, and then we'll test things out. Okay, so we've rebooted our server now. Now, I would recommend a modern browser such as Microsoft Edge to run the console, and I've also seen that the Neo4j admin console runs better under a modern browser as well. So I've installed Microsoft Edge onto this server. So if we browse to HTTPS localhost, we will get a certificate error because the install creates a self-signed certificate. We would recommend installing a certificate from a trusted certificate authority as per normal. And we come to our login page. Here's the display name we configured with our console configuration. So if I log in now, we come to our portal page. Now if we look at the server information, we have a bunch of built-in objects automatically created, but there's no domain information created yet. So now we need to run a scan. So if we go to our Birdsnest Explorer install folder, which was C Birdsnest, we'll be prompted to get access because it is restricted to admins only. And if we come into the scanners folder, we've got our AD scanner, Active Directory scanner. So if we just run that now, and that's a scan done of my home lab domain. And if we run a refresh on our stats, we can see now that we have 80 users, groups, computers in there. Now this domain is actually not particularly full of data, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to scan another domain that has a bunch of demo data in it. So if we come into this config subfolder, you can see the config files for the Neo4j database connection and also for AD. So we're going to create a second configuration for our demo domain. So I'm going to call that adconfig-demo, and I'm going to come in and edit that with Notepad and update the details. We need to give it a unique ID. The fully qualified domain name is usually a good place to start. Again, the domain or the domain controller that we want to connect to, the root of the domain. This domain doesn't support LDAP-S, so I'm going to change that to false. And again, the timeout we can leave the same, and we don't need credentials. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this from a command line. So if I run adscanner /config : and then our config file. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add the /batch option at the end, so it will automatically complete rather than sitting press enter to continue at the end. Now each time you see a dot coming up, that means it's writing 1,000 items to the Birdsnest Explorer database. So to give you an idea of the amount of data that's getting written and how long the scan has to go. And we're done. So again, that command line, if you want to see it, this is the command line that you would use if you were going to set this up as a scheduled task. And if we come and refresh our stats, we now have a significantly higher number of nodes in our database. And if we come back to reports, we can see that we're now getting data back from our reports and our queries. So that's our install and base configuration done. There is a slightly more in-depth tutorial on the install process if you want to view that. There is also a tutorial, and there'll be a quick start coming for the setting up the file system scanner, which is the next step for getting data ingested into Birdsnest Explorer. If you have any more queries, please get in touch via the 20road.com website. Have a great day.